I never imagined that a simple act as mundane as scanning the key fob to enter my neighborhood gym could escalate into a full-blown confrontation involving accusations of attempted break-ins, emails to corporate management, and a neighbor who seemed determined to transform a routine night into a personal vendetta. Yet that's exactly what unfolded one late Tuesday evening when I decided to push myself for a late-night workout after a long, grueling day that had left me mentally drained and physically exhausted. The kind of day where the fluorescent office lights and endless Zoom calls leave you craving solitude, quiet, and the comforting rhythm of weights clinking and treadmills humming in a nearly empty gym. A setting I always found strangely therapeutic, almost like a pause button from the chaos of normal life, and yet that evening would turn that familiar, safe space into a stage for tension I could never have predicted. The night had a crisp calmness to it, the kind of calm that comes when the city's energy has slowly decayed into silence, leaving only the faint hum of distant traffic and the occasional rustling of leaves from the oak trees lining the sidewalk, while streetlights stretched their long golden reflections across the asphalt, painting a scene both serene and subtly cinematic. And as I walked from my car to the gym entrance with my bag slung over one shoulder, earbuds in and music softly playing in one ear, I could feel the quiet anticipation of a late-night workout settling in, a feeling that often made me believe I could conquer the exhaustion and leave behind the day's anxieties for at least an hour. The glass doors of the gym were locked, as they always were after 10 p.m., and beside them was the small gray keypad panel where members scanned their key fobs to gain access. And while newer fobs produced an audible beep that resonated clearly across the lobby and sometimes even the parking lot, mine was one of the older models, quieter and subtler, triggering the lock mechanism with nothing more than a faint green light and the soft click of the latch. And as I pressed my fob against the scanner, feeling the lock release, and pushed the door open in what I considered the most ordinary of actions, I had no awareness that the silent nature of my key fob would soon become the seed of suspicion that someone had decided to nurture into a full-blown accusation. Inside, the gym was nearly empty, a fact that made the atmosphere feel both intimate and oddly tense, with a lone treadmill runner methodically jogging near the front windows, his hoodie half draped over his head, a woman performing deep stretches near the mirrored corner with meticulous concentration, and Jeff, the night shift staff member, sitting behind the front desk absorbed in his computer screen yet perceptibly aware of every motion in the lobby, the kind of quiet observant energy that only someone who has worked long hours in the same environment develops. And I nodded to him, a small habitual gesture that he returned without much thought, completely unaware that the calm routine of the night would soon be disrupted by an intrusion far more imagined than real. The disruption came in the form of a voice, sharp, cutting through the stillness of the lobby with a level of accusation that made it impossible to ignore, a voice belonging to the neighborly type who believes her perception of reality is not only correct but morally imperative. And when I turned, I saw her standing there with the posture of someone ready to enforce a law that didn't exist, short blonde hair pulled back neatly, tight athletic clothing, lipstick impeccably applied even at the late hour, and an expression of intense judgment that seemed designed to freeze anyone in their tracks. Eyebrows drawn tightly, jaw rigid, eyes narrowed, every element signaling that she had already made up her mind about who I was and what I had done, as if my mere presence had been a personal affront to her sense of order and propriety. Her reaction was immediate, escalating from suspicion to outrage, her arms folding tightly across her chest as though to physically contain the injustice she believed I represented. And with a dramatic glance at Jeff, she announced that she would be filing a report, a statement delivered with such certainty that it was clear she saw herself as a guardian of the gym, a self-appointed sentinel ensuring that every member complied with unwritten rules that existed only in her imagination. And as she marched toward the front desk with purposeful, emphatic steps, the few other gym-goers, now unable to avoid witnessing the unfolding scene, slowed their exercises, just enough to watch the human drama play out, turning an otherwise ordinary night into a tableau of tension, suspicion, and impending confrontation. Jeff, caught between customer service and conflict avoidance, tried to mediate calmly, explaining that the system had recorded my entry, showing that my fob had triggered the lock at the precise timestamp, my membership verified and fully active. Yet she refused to accept this, asserting in a voice increasingly high with indignation that the absence of a beep indicated a flaw, a malfunction, or a deliberate act of deception on my part. and that any such anomaly was grounds for corporate reporting. A declaration she seemed to deliver not out of rational concern, but because she had already authored a narrative in her mind where I was the intruder, the rule breaker, the anomaly to be corrected by her vigilance, while Jeff attempted to reassure her, showing the log entries on a monitor with precise timestamps and membership verification. She dismissed the evidence, claiming that personal experience trumped data, that because her fob beeped every time, mine not beeping must signify something nefarious, and even when I spoke up, calmly outlining the rational explanation, older fobs were quieter. The green light confirmed entry. The door mechanism functioned normally. She waved away my explanation as if acknowledging it would diminish her perceived authority, and with a flourish of determination, she pulled out her phone and began composing an email to corporate, detailing the alleged breach with the kind of self-righteous detail that suggested she believed she was documenting a matter of national security rather than a mundane late-night gym entry. I moved to the weights area, attempting to focus on squats and deadlifts to distract myself from the tension that now filled the gym, yet I could feel her gaze constantly flitting toward me, her presence an invisible pressure that transformed every rep and every click of dumbbells into a heightened scene of accusation, the kind of human tension that makes you acutely aware of your posture, your movements, and even the sound of your breath, as though the gym itself had become a stage for an absurd social experiment testing patience, civility, and the limits of disbelief, all over a key fob that merely functioned quietly. 10 minutes into my workout, she returned to the front desk, proudly announcing in a loud voice for anyone within earshot that she had emailed corporate, attached my description, and warned of the potential risk I represented, all while Jeff nodded politely, attempting to de-escalate a scenario that had escalated purely due to her assumptions, her need to be right, and the silent operation of a simple electronic device that had caused this entire ordeal. The next morning, I stopped by the gym outside of workout hours to speak with the manager, who greeted me with a knowing smile, already familiar with the narrative she had spun, and we watched the security footage together, showing me calmly entering, my fob blinking green, the door unlocking normally, and every movement accounted for. Yet it was clear that in her mind, none of this would undo the indignation she had felt the night before, because in her narrative, she had been the vigilant protector, and I was the silent intruder she had prevented, at least in her imagination. The manager explained that this was not an uncommon pattern. For her, complaints filed every few months, different members targeted each time, always a scenario where assumption overrode evidence. And while I felt relief knowing the logs and corporate documentation were on my side, there was also a quiet satisfaction in witnessing the consequences of her insistence collide with the immovable reality of proof, a subtle, almost poetic form of revenge that required no shouting, no confrontation, no dramatic escalation, simply the undeniable clarity that I had done nothing wrong and she had been rendered powerless in the face of that fact. When I later saw her at the gym again, her posture had changed, the rigidity was gone, the confident judgment replaced by avoidance, her eyes no longer daring to meet mine, a quiet recognition, unspoken yet perceptible, that she had misread reality entirely, that she had constructed a narrative in which she was the hero and I was the threat, only to discover that the threat never existed, and all of it, every accusation, every email, every dramatic flourish, had been triggered by nothing more than a key fob whose subtlety she was unaccustomed to, a small electronic device functioning exactly as designed, yet interpreted through the lens of ego, assumption, and misperception. And so, over the span of that night and the following days, I realized something profoundly human about this experience, that sometimes conflicts don't arise from malicious intent or actual wrongdoing, but from the stories people tell themselves about the world, the rigid insistence that reality must bend to their assumptions, and the small acts of calm, quiet evidence that inevitably dismantle those stories, leaving only a mixture of embarrassment, reflection, and unspoken acknowledgement that the universe rarely conspires in favor of ego, especially when key fobs are quieter than expected.